Well, thank you all for joining us today for an update on the forest fire situation in Churchill Falls. As you're aware, yesterday we provided an update on what was a very dynamic and changing situation with respect to the fire. Unfortunately, this time yesterday, the fire did cross the river in two different locations. And yesterday afternoon, the fire behaved quite aggressively, as was predicted if it did cross the river. It raged quite rapidly and moved quite rapidly, reaching rates of about 2 kilometers an hour towards if anyone's familiar with the area, towards the Churchill Falls Airport, which is still quite a ways away from the Churchill Falls community. The fire actually hit what's a lake called Hyde Lake, which is before the airport. It jumped the lake, which is a 2-kilometer diameter jump, and then jumped the airstrip. And all of this was happening quite rapidly, eventually coming up against the reservoir itself, at which point a lot of the energy was taken out of the fire. It did not move easterly, thank goodness. Overnight, the fire did settle, as has been how this fire has been behaving. It's gone down to a Category 2 to Category 3. It did, once it hit that reservoir and once it moved across that lake, it did cause quite a bit of smoke. Subsequently, there was some delay in the aerial analytics today of the fire. Nevertheless, we do have an update to provide. As we know, this is a dynamic situation. Anything can change. Currently, it's at a Category 2 to 3. It remains away from the perimeter of the town. It remains in that area that we just described, which is almost, if anyone's familiar with the topography, is almost it's like a rectangle. It still remains about 3 kilometers from the town, and the weather conditions are favorable such that the wind pattern in particular should keep it away from the town. That combined with, thank God, some rain. We're predicting some rain over the area. We're not sure how much, but the wind pattern, the rain pattern, and the humidex and temperature all providing for a cautiously optimistic day. We do have continued bomber suppression occurring when it's safe to do so. We've been somewhat limited up until mid-afternoon with respect to the smoke and the low ceiling. That said, there still remain 8 available to perform the circuits that are required to really attack the easterly edge and protect the town. Hydro has been continuing to monitor the plant remotely as best they can. And we know that that's causing issues for people in Lab West in particular. As you may be familiar, there has been an issue with power in Labrador West. Combination of smoke and water has caused a trip in the line heading from Churchill Falls to Labrador West. Fortunately, there has been some ability to draw power from Hydro-Quebec to supply Labrador City from Vermont. And happy to say that there's approximately 96% of Labrador City customers that are currently on power. Unfortunately, the engineering, which I'm not an expert, is not allowing for us to provide power currently to the citizens of Wabush. I do know, however, that we're looking at different solutions, and as soon as it is safe for a hydro official to return to Churchill Falls and flick the switch to reset that line, that's what we'll do. And we're even looking at, and Jennifer can comment about some creative ways to make that happen that is safe, because we know that no power for 24 hours now in Wabush is not ideal. I do know that the people of Lab City have opened up, as they always do, their hearts and homes to the people of Wabush to help supply electricity, to help supply heat and light, or cooling and light, and to help supply any water that may be required for the people of Wabush. Last night, the evacuation went as according to plan, and again, very orderly and efficient. I want to again thank the people of Happy Valley Goose Bay who welcomed an additional 90 people into their community. Special thanks to Perry Trimper and the gang at the YMCA who really put together a welcoming committee and an organization committee to welcome the final people who were evacuated from Churchill Falls. I know this is certainly an area, certainly continues to be a time of uncertainty and the subsequent anxiety that provokes in people who have been evacuated. Please know that the entire province is here to support you. The company is here to support you, but the people of the province are here to support you, and we'll be with you through all of this. We have the right resources in place to help fight the fire. We are finally getting some cooperation from Mother Nature, but I need you to also do your own mental health checks, check on each other, but also check on yourselves. And if you need to avail of help, that's okay. The anxiety that you may be feeling, it's okay. But please seek help if it is needed, either through 811, Bridge the Gap, or we have a counselor on the ground in Happy Valley Goose Bay who's certainly able to help you with some of the stress and strain that you may be feeling. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Jennifer Williams from an update with respect to Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. Jennifer?
Thank you, Premier. I'll open it up just with a quick comment on the employees and the residents of Churchill Falls that are now located in Goose Bay. Most of them, I guess, are the ones that evacuated last night in Goose Bay. It was a very difficult thing for those folks to leave the plant. And for them, as well as those that were receiving them, it was quite emotional to evacuate. So we are really thinking of them a lot from a distance, that we know that it was a lot for them to drive away. It's their baby, I would suggest. And so while we appreciate their feeling, we're really doing everything we can to support them. And just wanted to make a note of that this is a really big deal for the people who are working on that facility. And I guess and they're leaving their homes as well, obviously. So it became, I think, extra fresh last night because we had the evacuation before, and then you had another host of people that left, and they were the last ones to go. They knew it was an eventuality, but it was still a really big deal, and so it really kind of unearthed some of the feelings for everybody, I think, that had previously experienced that. So I do want to note that, and to the Premier's point, is it's really important that people care for themselves, care for each other, be extra patient with each other. All of us, when we're tired, can lose a bit of patience. We're asking for a lot of patience from the people of Labrador right now, and we just ask for a little kindness. It's in all of us. I really know that it is true. So it's a little bit of extra patience with each other. So now into the more technical type things, because those are also really important updates for everybody to hear about. The remote monitoring that we instituted urgently last week is going well. The teams that are monitoring that are doing a wonderful job and keeping an eye on things. So with regards to the supply that we have committed to customers, there's been no bumps or bruises associated with that. I will talk a little bit now about Lab West, as the Premier updated you on, as well as Wabush, well, Lab City and Wabush. As the Premier said, we're very close to having most of the customers, or if not all of the customers, on the Lab City side back in service. Since this a trip of the lines from Churchill Falls into Lab West occurred, while we were wanting to get back in and just reset the lines, essentially, we also had contingencies being researched about what else could we do. And that could be bringing in new supply, which is not a short-term thing. You can't just get that turned around in 24 hours. This is a big town that you would need to try to supply, so we're researching that. Researching, can we do some technical modifications in the field to make that happen, to do some additional supply, maybe direct some of the Fairmont power into Wabush. Again, where this hasn't been done, these are very technical things to do. You don't want to implement something and then have power quality issues that could affect everybody. So you have to do this very thoughtfully and very carefully. And then if you do choose to do something, if technically it can work, we have to be really careful how we execute on that. Electricity is incredibly dangerous, and we have to be very thoughtful and careful about how we choose then to implement any solutions that may indeed be possible. So we continue to work on those things. So over to Wabush, they do remain without power, as the Premier had mentioned, and that is also not easy for folks to have now 24 hours without power and no clear sight on when you may be getting it back. The Premier did mention that we are working with our government officials to discuss when is it safe to bring a team into Churchill Falls. There may be a window in the coming hours to do that. We're hopeful, but we still are at the mercy of Mother Nature. So I do want to give a little bit of hope to folks that that might be possible. What that would mean is we would have to send folks in. They'd have to do all their safety checks. They will try to attempt to reestablish the line. We don't know if the line is damaged, right? It could indeed be damaged. But so I do want to let you know that there's a window that we think we might be able to try that. If that holds in, that's wonderful. Then we should be in much better shape. But I want to reassure you that we are doing everything we can for option 1, and then option 2 and option 3 are still being pursued as well. So I would suggest we'll know more over the next, say, 6 to 12 hours, how things look with regards to those possibilities. And that's what I was going to say that too, is we are implementing things that haven't been done before. And so every time you do that, there is uncertainty of you might try it, and it also might be effective for a period of time, and then something changes and it's not effective. So where you are doing things that haven't been done before, we are asking again for continued patience with folks. We really do appreciate it. And that will just sort of clue up my comments, is that there's people that have moved from their homes, and they're incredibly affected. And we are really trying to support everybody, and those certainly first and foremost. So we are asking for patience as much as possible for other people that are affected. We really do implore you to understand that there are people that are incredibly affected, that are removed from their homes, and that we have to do our best to prioritize how we are handling things for them. And we will also address all the other expectations of the people of Hydro. But I do implore you to understand that that is how those people are feeling, and we really do have to prioritize that. So on that, Premier.
Well, thanks very much. And just to pick up before we send it to questions, the people who have left their homes and left what is truly a proud asset for the people who manage that asset, and we're all proud of that asset as well. They're experiencing stress and anxiety, and we all need to be understanding, and we all want to thank them, not only for their service, and especially those who stayed behind to try to operate this plant under limited capacity, but also for their patience in dealing with an uncertain situation. It's a situation nobody wants to be in, but I can tell you, having talked to many of them when we were there last Sunday, they may feel the stress and strain, but they are still in good spirits, given how close-knit this community is, how tight they all are, and how much support they're being given from people across the province, especially in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So I'll just echo Jennifer's final comments there, and our thoughts are always with those employees that have been displaced, as that's paramount. So we'll open it up now to questions from the media.
Can you explain why in the case of Labrador City, there is backup power, but in the case of Wabush, there isn't?
Mm-hmm. So
it's something that the mayor brought up this morning.
Yeah, we had a great we had a great conversation with Jennifer and I did with Ron and Belinda last night. Mm-hmm. And there is a technical explanation for that, and we explained that to Ron, but I don't know if you want to take away the technical explanation.
Sure.
Jennifer.
I will do my best as the civil engineer, not an electrical engineer. But you...
It's better than a surgeon, I think.
Yeah, I will say it's better than a surgeon. I'm going to get fired. There's a slight distance, I guess, between the two, and some of it comes down to fault levels. So I am going a little too far with this, but basically one station is not equivalent necessarily to another station. And so when you are doing things uniquely with bringing power of a different setup into stations that it hasn't received that power before, the technical specifications of one station are often different than the technical specifications of another station. And so that is why the Fairmont power was a good match for the Lab City station, not a good match for the existing infrastructure and existing protection settings, for example, on the Wabush, serving Wabush. So what we're doing is we're trying to come up with new solutions to alter things in the Wabush station to allow for that Fairmont power to be shared amongst the two stations. We don't think it would be enough power from Fairmont to supply both, but if we can get through the technical protection issues, which again, you have to do a study to say, is it possible? Then if it is possible, what is involved in updating it in a very safe manner? So that's why it's taking us some time. And if you rush it, you could have power quality issues and you fry everyone's microwave. So we have to be super careful with how we implement that. So that is essentially why that we were doing that. But our first priority and the first option would be to reset, as the Premier mentioned, to reset the breakers back in Churchill Falls. And again, we've been working with government officials to see, is there a safe window to send people from Goose Bay? And they're ready to go. They're sort of waiting for the right weather window that it makes sense and it's safe to fly people via chopper into Churchill, get down on the ground, do the checks and the things that they need to do, and attempt it. And they will do that once we have that appropriate window. That is the first preference. I will say that we have already moved Lab City onto Fairmont. So even if we choose to reestablish that line, we'd actually have to break, we would have to make sure that Fairmont and Lab City is protected from that re-energization. So there's a whole host of steps that are involved in this.
Just want to go back to the Premier mentioned, the visual of getting someone in there just to flip the switch. There are breakers and that sort of thing. And just to be clear, there's no guarantee that that would work.
Correct.
Definitely not. No, as Jennifer suggested, it could be actual physical damage to the infrastructure that we just don't have eyes on right now, given the scenario. It's my understanding that there's a reasonable probability that it's a switch, but there is always the possibility that it is a damaged piece of infrastructure. And the easiest thing to do at this point, when it is safe, is to try to reset the switch. If that doesn't work, then we'll have to wait until it's safe to actually do a full evaluation of the line itself.
As far as the power outages go, what's the main cause of them? Is it the smoke? Is it the rain? Is it the water? I've heard water from bombers have possibly damaged.
It could be a combination of both of those things, and right now it's kind of premature. No one has had direct eyes on to where the actual outage occurred. Smoke can get into the transmission elements that cause it to break, as you suggested, or there could be some catastrophic failure that we're not aware of because no one has had eyes on it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get an update from officials on just what exactly the fire behavior is like today? How is the fire behaving, and how much of a danger does it present to the community of Churchill Falls today compared to yesterday when we were talking?
Sure, we'll pass it over. But again, we said that the weather pattern is favorable. The fire seems to die down overnight to a Category 2, and then around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon pick up. The nice thing about today is the wind patterns remain favorable. The humidex remains favorable, and the chance of rain is more than favorable as desired. So that combined with the suppression activity, we hope will keep it at bay. But it, again, Peter, seems to pick up in the afternoon. I'll turn it over to Jamie and Blair, though.
So I guess I'd start with speaking about the ranking scale a little bit. So rank 1 is basically a smoldering fire. Rank 6 at the other extreme is some of the images people saw yesterday. 2 to 3 is in the middle, which, as the Premier said, is the classification right now. You do see some open flame. You do see lots of smoke and hot spots. I think the Premier described the weather perfectly. These are much better days to fight fires than the 2 or 3 we've seen proceeding today. And once we get a clear visual, once the ceiling is clear and we can get choppers back up, we'll look at what the suppression plan is.
And Premier, as you mentioned, the fire actually got close to the Churchill Falls airport. I know it's not too close to the town, but we did see webcam footage too that showed flames which seemed very close to the airport. Do we know the condition of the Churchill Falls airport at this time? Yeah, so the flames were very, very close, and for some reason jumped the airstrip and jumped all the buildings. So on the flyover that occurred this morning with the helicopter, as best they can tell from
however many 100 feet they're up, the buildings are intact. So it just speaks to the energy and the force of nature that a forest fire actually is, to be able to jump a 2-kilometer lake, to be able to jump an airstrip and not touch anything in between is just speaks to the massive amount of energy that is in a forest fire. But to our knowledge, the update this morning from the helicopter flyover was the airstrip is intact, and as are the buildings on the airstrip.
You talked about new supply, possibly for new supply. What does that mean?
So moving a generator up onto site. So, if we have a catastrophic issue and we have to do something, we could put a generator in place, but they need a transformer, and you have to source the exact voltage because, for example, it has to come with, a certain voltage to another voltage. So as much as you might look up in the sky and think it's all got to be the same, often if you ever look at a supply chain for a utility, there's an awful lot of spare equipment. So you may not have all of the exact you would have spares for your own utility, but if we're going to borrow from Fairmont, their system is different than ours, right? Or there'd be components that are different. So we have to source, for example, maybe we'd have to source something there for that would have to be spare. But if we, potentially could borrow or, source within our own system or, with a neighbor system, something to bring and put on site, obviously getting something to Lab West is a good distance away. The road obviously is appropriately closed to traffic, so we would try to route it around through Quebec or some other distance. So from an alternate supply perspective, there is definitely some work associated with that, but we're pursuing that. We're pursuing it just as aggressively as we are pursuing getting somebody in to do the breaker, just as we're pursuing making system changes to allow Fairmont to supply. So we've sort of got several, in the same way we had plans for the plant contingencies, all the various things. We got the exact same planning scenarios happening for how can we reestablish power to Lab West.
Just on that, who made the ask of Hydro-Quebec, and was it difficult to do? Just given the whole dynamic,
Yeah, no, the political dynamic and the negotiating dynamic is much different and is placed aside when Canadians are in need. Canadians answer, and contractual differences in political history aside, everybody steps up, and that would be reciprocated from us to Quebec without question, should they need it. You saw it during the pandemic, you saw it during other forest fires, you saw it during hurricane relief. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians always stand up to help our neighbors, and will continue to do so, and we're happy to see it being reciprocated from other Canadian jurisdictions, and Quebec is no exception.
In order to assess the damage and make any repairs or bring the lines back up, what are the conditions that you need to have on the ground?
Well, I mean, that would be one for the fire officials, but so we'd be looking at when it's safe to put people on the ground to fight the fires. So, that grueling work of actually battling the last few embers and turning sod and removing debris and actually fighting the fire with sprinklers and hoses. That would be the right time to have any individuals on the ground to potentially look at it. Presumably, there could be a chopper flight before that, but the conditions just haven't allowed it, and it's a big, long line, and you can imagine it's anywhere along that circuit could be a trip, and we need to make sure it's safe to be able to evaluate it either from the air or from the land.
The Churchill Falls plant was never designed to continue operating with no one on site. How long can that happen?
So, to say it can happen for 24 hours or 2 years, we're checking it now, right? We're really kind of testing that. As I said yesterday, we expect that as long as there's no significant fluctuations or major system disturbances, we can continue for quite some time. Plus, we do think there could be windows where you could probably get into some parts of the whole system, which would be upcountry structures, that kind of thing, that would allow you to maybe make some of those further modifications. So, I don't want this to go on for a year or 2 years, because I think you want to be able to, you want to be able to get in and do routine maintenance to keep the plant in long-term good condition. But yeah, I'm not concerned of this going on for a number of weeks. It's not ideal, but we're okay, I think, to do that.
And as we talked about yesterday, the Remote Operations Center is although it's rudimentary, it does allow for some operations of the plant, albeit greatly diminished. And I think that will be a kind of lesson moving forward and a takeaway. But kudos to the women and men who set that up and are operating it currently. I saw it live. He was increasing and decreasing loads from Happy Valley Goose Bay to the plant a couple hundred kilometers away.
I was just going to add a little bit, and it might be stating some of the obvious. And I've been recounting this to some of the folks who are asking me, sort of how are things going. And there's, 50 to 100 people who, when their eyes open in the morning to when their eyes close at night, and I'm talking midnight, that this is all they're doing. And they're chasing equipment. They are coming up with brand new solutions that have never been tested before. There's another 100 that are 75% of their day is absolutely in support of this. So anything that is possible with regards to supporting the employees and the evacuated family members there's a lot of folks that are supporting that. Keeping the plant going as is, there's a lot of folks that are indeed supporting that. Alternative solutions, there's a lot of folks that are supporting that. Like, there is no expense spared, no stone unturned. And, a lot of lessons learned, and I think we learned, we've had fires before, so we have some experience, with this, with, Central there a couple of years ago, Bay Despair, exploits. There's a lot of effort going into this, and we are really, it is a 100% priority for the organization right now.
The backup power won't be able to supply the mines in the area. Premier, how concerned are you about the fact that if this does drag on, even if we get some backup power, those mines are going to continue to be shut down?
Of course, that's a concern. I mean, Lab West is an economic generator, an economic powerhouse for the entire province, and those mines are incredibly important, as are the people who work in them. So that's concerning, but as I understand it, the companies have been very cooperative, and hopefully this is a very short-term thing, Peter. Like last year, we had to shut down, I'm not sure if you recall or not, because the fire influenced the railroad, right, that would ship ore body out. Hopefully it won't be as long as that shut down, certainly, but the companies were able to accommodate all their employees and were able to start and stop and adjust the loads accordingly based on that shutdown. And I have full confidence that they'll be able to do the same this time around. They're incredibly valued corporate citizens, and equally the people who work in them are they're incredible at what they do. They're the best at what they do in the world, and they're able to adapt and pivot when required.
Is there a sense of when that window could open, when you could go and flip that switch, for lack of
I mean, that's I guess, no. I mean, there's trying to predict that window is based on analytics provided by the people on the ground. It's also provided by inputs from the weather. And as we know, especially in Labrador, but in Newfoundland and Labrador more broadly, weather patterns can change very quickly. So I'd be very hesitant to predict an exact window when that would occur.
At this point of the day, 2:30, is it going to happen today?
Again, we'll have to exercise and look at those windows when they occur. So to be nailed down on an exact time when that could happen is, I think it'd be wrong, Patrick. We're not trying to hide anything.
Rather than nailing down a specific time, that's not what I'm asking for. Are people in Wallbush and Lab City going to have another night without power? I guess is the
Possibly. And the longer it goes throughout the day, more probably. But we'll continue to look at those options as they present themselves, and that is real-time live data that needs to be interpreted and then exercised if the window exists.
Mm-hmm. And, even if we do find a window today, we have to be very clear, and I think we've said it already today, is it may not work.
Yeah.
So
There may be
even
structural
if
damage.
the Premier said, they're going to be in there in a half hour, we shouldn't assume that means we're good, right? I think it's better for folks to plan for that not being the case, as opposed to assuming it's the case. I think we need to plan for that. And then if it happens to work out today, if you happen to do that, great. If it doesn't, a lot of things have to line up for it to be a successful outcome with regards to that. So it's best to be ready for that, as opposed to assume it's going to happen.
And I want to stress that the safety of the individuals that we would put in there supersedes everything. And the mayor, Ron last night was super supportive, obviously, of that concept, and very understanding and empathetic of that imperative.
And maybe just remind folks to follow official channels for updates, like government.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we, Hydro has been providing regular updates on social media. Please follow their advice, our advice as government. I know there's in any environment like this, there can be a lot of myths, and there can be a lot of not even intentional misinformation, but just broken telephone tag information sometimes. So please get the advice from trusted sources from like Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
We also